Yeah, I wanna burn, break, crash, explode. Every time you look at me, I know all I wanna do.
Sophomores, I'm Queen Nate, and welcome back to Crash Course. Today I'm going to talk about accelerating global change and realignment circa 1900 to the present. The rapid advances in science altered the understanding of the universe and natural world and led to the development of new technologies. These changes enabled population growth, which altered how humans interacted with the environment and disrupted the balances in local, regional, and global levels. Researchers made rapid advances in science that spread throughout the world, assisted by the development of new technologies. With the new medical innovation, the population increased and less people were suffering with the deadly diseases such as poliomyelitis and bacterial infections. The Green Revolution also is part of the new science development happening in 1900s. It provided a large production of crops in the developing countries by using fertilizer and pesticides. However, the pollution by humans caused the global warming and accelerated sea level due to climate change. Beginning from 1977, the weather has been warmer than 20th century's average climate. And now we have Maria.
Okay, science has made huge advances in extending the human lifespan, but advances in communication and transportation help lead diseases at a fast rate. During the Columbian Exchange, Europeans introduced diseases that killed about 90% of Native Americans. So the influenza pandemic killed about 20 to 40 million people, which means that there was more deaths with this disease than in the Great War. The first outbreak was in Spain in 1918 and was spread through wartime on land and sea. Scientists tried to fight against other diseases like chickenpox, while other diseases like malaria and tuberculosis came back with full force, killing about 429 million people. In 1942 in Germany, many Soviet soldiers were exposed to cholera, bubonic plague, and other diseases. AIDS first appeared in 1981 in New York and caused more than 30 million deaths. The birth rates in different countries like Latin America became a major concern to the government. They adopted birth control programs, and in 1960, birth control pills were introduced. Improved military technologies helped increase casualties during the atomic bomb of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, killing about 90 to 146,000 people.
It's Angie, and by the 20th century, people began to realize that the right to power shouldn't be based on divine right or political authority. Many older empires like the Ottoman, Russian, and Qing eventually collapsed due to political and social discontent, technological stagnation, and military defeat. While the Europeans advanced and improved their weapons, over other empires fell behind and were put at a disadvantage, which eventually led to military defeat. Due to the people's dissatisfaction with rule, many colonies like India and the Gold Coast began to negotiate their way into independence. However, many of these colonies also had to struggle through brutal wars in order to finally gain their independence. Many nationalist leaders then realized that they did not want to support imperialism, so they decided to challenge it. One well-known leader, known as Mohandas Gandhi, who supported many movements in order to help people gain an independent state. Regional, religious, and ethnic movements were challenged both colonial and inherited imperial boundaries, and they were caused by social tensions. There were numerous movements whose goal was to unite everyone, and these movements were even transnational. Over time, new movements were developed and spread across the world. And now, on to Celine.
Thanks, Angie. So my name is Celine, and I'm here to talk about political changes that were accompanied by major demographic and social consequences. An example of this is the division of the Middle East into mandatory states. It all started in 1916, where a secret agreement occurred between the Britain and France as to how they would divide up the Middle East. By the end of World War I, the League of Nations was established, and they had come up with the mandates and borders to divide the Middle East. However, they did not consider the people who lived there, causing arguments and instabilities that some countries still have today. Another thing that I'm going to talk about are military conflicts that occurred on unprecedented global scale. World War I and World War II were the first total wars, and to encourage their states' resources, governments used ideologies like fascism, nationalism, and communism. They also used political speeches, art, media, and intensified forms of nationalism. Now to Paula.
Thanks, Celine. During the 20th century, there was many conflicts going on because of the various wars
in this era, such as World War I and World War II. Many groups try to make a change by practicing the Non-Violence Act and even challenge these wars. Mohandas Gandhi promoted non-violence and so did Nelson Mandela. Nelson protested apartheid because he wanted fair laws for all the citizens in South Africa. The Tiananmen Square protesters that promoted democracy in China displayed alternatives to their government by supporting equal rights for women, new marriage laws, and equal access to divorce. On the other hand, some military states, such as Palestine, intensified conflict by observing the region's energies. Zionists combated a violent act to establish a Jewish state, which caused a new problem to their freedom. Al-Qaeda was a movement that caused violence since it was a global terrorist network created by Osama bin Laden. He began to hate the United States and even wanted them to die because he wanted the economy to grow. Now on to Gabriel.
Thanks, Paula. States responded in a variety of ways to the economic challenges of the 20th century. In the communist states of the Soviet Union and China, the 5-year plan was in place. It was a government plan for economic development over the 5 years. The first such plan in the Soviet Union was inaugurated in 1928. At the beginning of the 20th century in the United States and part of Europe, governments played a minimal role in their natural economies. With the onset of the Great Depression, governments began to take a more active role in economic life. For example, the New Deal. In the spring of 1935, Roosevelt launched a second, more aggressive series of federal programs. In April, he created the Work Progress Administration to provide for unemployed people. In newly independent states after World War II, governments often took on a strong role in guiding economic life to promote development. For example, the encouragement of export-oriented economies in East Asia. Nasser's efforts to strengthen Egypt included the adoption of an internationalist position akin to Nehru's non-alignment policy in India, whose neutralism was based on the belief that Cold War politics were new imperialistic forms. Nasser's condemned states joined military alliances with foreign powers such as the Baghdad Pact, and he believed that bipolar world opportunities could be exploited in the advancement of Egypt. In a trend accelerated by the end of the Cold War, many governments encouraged free market economic policies and promoted economic liberalization in the late 20th century. For example, Reagan. During his U.S. presidency from 1981 to 1989, Ronald renewed attacks on communism, advocated massive military spending, and established the Strategic Defense Initiative, which provided nuclear bomb protection for the Soviet Union. Now, on to Nita.
Thanks, Gabe. So now on to discussing about how states and communities increasingly became dependent on each other due to international organizations formed. New economic organizations such as the World Trade Organization and the World Bank formed to promote trade between countries and economic development through cooperation. Aside from economic organizations, the 20th century also saw the rise of political interdependence to prevent global conflicts among countries. For example, the formation of the League of the Nations to preserve world peace, the establishment of the United Nations to prevent another world war and promote post-war recovery. They also aimed at preventing global conflict by settling disputes through necessary actions such as diplomatic protests or military action. The establishment of such organizations promoted economic and political interdependency between countries. Now, on to Kathy.
Konnichiwa. My name is Kathy too, and I'm here to talk to you about changes in society and culture. Assumptions about race, class, and gender encountered great changes during this era. For example, the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, seen here, resulted in the first time that the countries agreed on a statement of inalienable human rights. This declaration promoted the economic, social, and cultural rights of women, children, and refugees worldwide. The right for women to vote and hold public office increased access to education and political and professional roles as female literacy rates increased. And in many parts of the world, there were increasing numbers of women in higher education, such as colleges and universities. The end of apartheid only ended the legal barriers such as segregation for Black South Africans, but however, racial and gender discrimination still reign in today's world. Now on to popular consumer culture. The World Cup is probably the biggest phenomenon of all time. Every 4 years, the whole nation unites together to watch soccer, have some good food, and of course purchase apparel, consumer apparel, right? And then the Olympics are also held every 4 years. People unite, wear fan gear, celebrate some food, cheer on their respective countries, and have fun. Both the World Cup and the Olympics are prime examples of syncretism because many different cultures and ideas came together during one worldwide event.